I never expected my ordinary apartment to become the backdrop for something that would change my life forever. My name is Jamie. I'm 28, and I've been out to my friends and family for about 5 years now. Coming to terms with my sexuality wasn't particularly dramatic. My parents were supportive, friends were accepting, and I've built a comfortable life for myself in this mid-sized city where I work as a graphic designer. My apartment is nothing special. A one-bedroom on the third floor of a converted brownstone with large windows that face the street. Those windows, particularly the one in my living room, would become significant in ways I never imagined. My friendship with Alex began 3 years ago when we both signed up for a local community basketball league. I joined to meet new people, while Alex was new to the city and looking to maintain his college athlete physique. He was tall, with an easy smile and the kind of confidence that drew people to him naturally. At 29, Alex worked in finance, had a string of ex-girlfriends he remained oddly friendly with, and possessed this infectious laugh that could dissolve tension in any room. We clicked immediately over our shared love of obscure indie bands and terrible sci-fi movies. Alex was the kind of straight guy who never seemed uncomfortable around me being gay. It was simply a non-issue, which was refreshing. Our friendship evolved naturally, from post-game beers with the team to hanging out just the two of us, marathon watching shows, or trying new restaurants around the city. Let me explain why this friendship mattered so much to me. Growing up, I'd always struggled with male friendships. There was always this underlying fear that they'd discover I was gay before I was ready to tell them, or worse, that they already knew and were just tolerating me. With Alex, I never felt that barrier. He was the first straight male friend I had where my sexuality wasn't the elephant in the room or a source of awkward jokes. We were just friends, no qualifiers needed. I won't pretend I never noticed how attractive Alex was. Of course I did. He had this way of running his hand through his dark hair when he was thinking that was impossibly endearing. But I'd long ago mastered the art of appreciating a handsome straight friend without letting it complicate things. Or at least, I thought I had. Our friendship was built on small moments. Inside jokes about the terrible referee at our games, the time Alex tried to cook paella and nearly burned down his kitchen, the night we got caught in a sudden downpour and ended up soaked and laughing in a 24-hour diner at 2 a.m. We had nicknames for each other that made no sense to anyone else. He'd text me random thoughts at odd hours, knowing I'd be awake and would appreciate his 3 a.m. existential questions. There were moments, looking back, that might have been signs of something more. The way his eyes would linger on me sometimes when he thought I wasn't looking. How he'd casually touch my shoulder or arm during conversations. The fact that he'd cancel dates if I was having a bad day and needed company. But I dismissed these as my own wishful thinking, the classic trap of the gay man projecting feelings onto his straight friend. The night everything changed started ordinarily enough. It was a Friday in late October, the kind where the air turns crisp and everyone switches from iced coffee to hot. Alex had texted asking if he could come over after work. He'd had a rough week and wanted to unwind with takeout and beer. This was nothing unusual. We often spent Friday nights this way when neither of us had other plans. He arrived with Thai food and a six-pack of some craft beer he'd been wanting to try. We ate on my couch, talking about his difficult client and my creative block with a new design project. The conversation flowed easily as it always did, punctuated by comfortable silences and the background noise of whatever playlist I had going. 3 beers in, Alex seemed more relaxed but also somewhat distracted. He kept looking out my living room window, then back at me, then away again. I asked him what was on his mind, and he shrugged it off, saying he was just tired. But there was something in his expression I couldn't quite read, a tension that wasn't usually there. We moved to the topic of his recent dating life. He'd been seeing someone casually for a few weeks, but didn't seem particularly excited about her. I don't know, he sighed, leaning back against my couch. Something's just missing. The connection, you know? Like what we have, but different. I nodded, not entirely sure what he meant, but not wanting to press. Sometimes it takes a while to build that kind of rapport with someone, I offered. Alex stood up suddenly, walking to my living room window. The streetlights cast shadows across his face as he looked out. Have you ever wondered if you're looking for the wrong thing all along? He asked, his voice quieter than usual. I joined him at the window, curious about this philosophical turn. What do you mean? What happened next seems almost dreamlike in my memory. Alex turned to me, his expression intense in a way I'd never seen before. Without warning, he placed his hands on my shoulders and gently, but firmly pressed me back against the window. My heart began racing, confusion and something else, something electric, coursing through me. "The neighbors can't see from here," he said, his voice low and slightly rough. "We're too high up, and the angle's wrong." I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. His face was inches from mine, his eyes searching my expression for something. "Alex," I managed to say, "what are you doing?" "I don't know," he whispered, and I could smell the beer on his breath, feel the warmth of his body so close to mine. "I've been thinking about this for weeks. Months, maybe." Time seemed suspended in that moment. My back against the cool glass, Alex's hands still on my shoulders, his eyes locked with mine. I had imagined scenarios like this in fleeting thoughts I'd quickly dismissed, but never believed they could materialize. "You're straight," I said, the words sounding hollow even to my own ears. A small smile played at the corner of his mouth. "Am I? I'm not so sure anymore." The kiss, when it happened, was hesitant at first, a question more than a statement. His lips brushed against mine so lightly I could have imagined it. Then, as if making a decision, he kissed me properly, one hand moving to the back of my neck. I responded without thinking, years of suppressed feelings surging forward. When we broke apart, the reality of what had just happened crashed over me like a wave. I stepped away from the window, away from Alex, my mind racing. What did this mean? Was he just drunk and curious? Would our friendship survive this? "I should go," Alex said, misreading my retreat as rejection. "No," I said quickly. "We should talk about this. I need to understand what's happening here." He ran his hand through his hair, that gesture I'd always found so charming, and looked more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him. "I don't have it all figured out," he admitted. "I just know that when I'm with you, everything makes sense in a way it never has with anyone else." We moved back to the couch, sitting further apart than we had earlier, the space between us now charged with uncertainty. The next hour was filled with halting confessions and questions. Alex revealed he'd been questioning his sexuality for years, but had never acted on it, never felt comfortable enough with anyone to explore those feelings until me. "Why now?" I asked, still not entirely convinced this wasn't some alcohol-induced experiment. "Because I couldn't not do it anymore," he said simply. "Because watching you date other guys was starting to hurt in a way I couldn't ignore." The days that followed were awkward, beautiful, confusing, and exhilarating all at once. We texted constantly, but didn't see each other for nearly a week. Alex said he needed time to process, to make sure his feelings were real and not just some momentary impulse. I respected that, though the waiting was agonizing. I replayed every moment of our friendship, looking for signs I might have missed. The way he'd always sit next to me at group gatherings. How he never seemed to date anyone seriously for long. The night he got oddly quiet when I mentioned a date I was excited about. Had I been blind to what was developing between us? My friends had mixed reactions when I cautiously told them what had happened. My best friend Mia was skeptical. "Just be careful," she warned. "Straight guys experimenting can leave a lot of collateral damage." My roommate from college, David, who'd gone through something similar, was more optimistic. "Sometimes people surprise you," he said. "And sometimes they surprise themselves even more." I thought about all the times I'd heard stories about gay men falling for their straight friends, how those stories almost never ended well. Was I setting myself up for heartbreak? Was Alex going through a phase he'd regret once it passed? These questions kept me awake at night, staring at my ceiling, replaying the feeling of being pressed against that window, the look in his eyes before he kissed me. A week after the window incident, as I'd started calling it in my head, Alex asked if he could come over again. My stomach was in knots as I waited for him to arrive. When he knocked, I took a deep breath before opening the door. He looked different somehow, more certain, his eyes clear and focused. Without preamble, he said, "I've been doing a lot of thinking." My heart sank, preparing for the letdown, the I was confused speech I'd been dreading. Instead, Alex stepped forward, took my face in his hands, and kissed me with none of the hesitation from before. "I'm not confused," he said when we parted. "I'm not drunk. I'm not experimenting. This is real for me, Jamie." That night, we talked for hours. Alex shared how he'd always felt something was missing in his relationships with women, how he'd pushed away thoughts about men because it didn't fit the future he'd imagined for himself. He talked about his conservative family and his fears about coming out. I shared my own coming out journey, the difficulties and the liberations. I can't promise I won't mess up, he told me honestly. This is all new territory for me, but I want to try. With you. The weeks that followed were a delicate dance of discovery. We decided to keep things between us for a while, not out of shame, but to give Alex space to navigate his newly acknowledged identity without external pressures. Our basketball teammates noticed a shift in our dynamic, but attributed it to some inside joke they weren't part of. Our first official date was almost comically formal, given how comfortable we already were with each other. Alex picked me up, brought flowers, and took me to a nice restaurant across town. We kept laughing at how strange it felt to be doing this dating ritual when we already knew each other's most annoying habits and embarrassing stories. The physical aspect of our relationship evolved naturally. Alex was hesitant at first, not from lack of desire, but from lack of experience. I was patient, letting him set the pace, discovering together what felt right. There was an intimacy to these discoveries that went beyond the physical, a vulnerability and trust that deepened our connection. Not everything was smooth sailing. Alex had moments of panic about what this meant for his identity, his relationships with family and friends. I had my own insecurities, wondering if I was just a stepping stone on his journey of self-discovery. We argued sometimes, miscommunicated, hurt each other unintentionally. 3 months after that night by the window, we faced our first major hurdle. Alex's parents were coming to visit, and he had to decide whether to tell them about us. His family wasn't openly homophobic, but they were traditional, with clear expectations about the life their son would lead. "I'm not ashamed of us," Alex assured me. "I'm just not sure I'm ready for that conversation." I understood his hesitation, but couldn't help feeling like a secret he was keeping. We had several tense discussions about it, trying to balance his need for time with my desire not to go backward into the closet. In the end, Alex surprised me. The day before his parents arrived, he called them and told them everything. When they came, they were awkward but trying, asking questions, making an effort to include me in conversations. His mother hugged me when they left, whispering, "Thank you for making him happy." That night, as we lay in bed, Alex turned to me with tears in his eyes. "Thank you for being patient with me," he said, "for giving me space to figure things out, but not letting me hide." 6 months into our relationship, we decided to move in together. It was perhaps too soon by conventional standards, but nothing about our journey had been conventional. My lease was ending, and it seemed like the natural next step. On moving day, as we carried boxes up to what was now our apartment, we passed by that living room window, the scene of the moment that had changed everything. Alex set down the box he was carrying and pulled me close. "Remember when I told you the neighbors couldn't see us from here?" he asked, a mischievous glint in his eye. I nodded, smiling at the memory. "I lied," he admitted with a laugh. "They definitely could have seen us. I just needed an excuse to be brave." I laughed, shaking my head at this revelation. "So Mrs. Abernathy across the street got quite a show." "Worth it," he said, kissing me softly. "Completely worth it. Our story isn't perfect. Alex still navigates the complexities of coming out later in life. I still sometimes worry that one day he'll wake up and realize this isn't what he wants. But we talk about these fears, face them together rather than letting them fester. What I've learned through all of this is that love doesn't always arrive in the packages we expect. Sometimes it's been there all along, waiting for the right moment, or the right window, to reveal itself. The line between friendship and love isn't always clear, and maybe it doesn't need to be. Alex and I still play in that basketball league where we met. Some of the guys were surprised when they found out about us. Others claimed they'd seen it coming all along. We still watch terrible sci-fi movies and argue about music. But now, when he runs his hand through his hair in that way that always captivated me, I can reach out and touch him, no longer confined by the boundaries I thought were fixed and immovable. Looking back, I realized that moment by the window wasn't really the beginning of our story. It was simply the moment we both finally acknowledged what had been developing between us for years. The real story was in all those small moments that came before, the shared jokes, the late-night conversations, the comfortable silences, the gradual building of trust and understanding that allowed both of us to be vulnerable enough to take that leap. Sometimes Alex still presses me against that window, whispering the same words, "The neighbors can't see from here." Now an inside joke and a reminder of how far we've come. And even though I now know it's not true, I play along. Because some moments are worth revisiting, some lies are really just another form of truth. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that labels, straight, gay, friend, lover, are far less important than the connections we form. Alex may have once called himself straight, just as I once called him merely a friend. But the reality of who we are together transcends those simple categories, exists in a space that's uniquely ours. So if you find yourself pressed against a window by someone you thought you understood completely, remember that sometimes people surprise you in the most beautiful ways. And sometimes, the view from that window reveals horizons you never imagined possible. Total _char_count, 17,824.